We are working on our Zentangle Initials. Most of you should be at the point where you have finalized the design of your letter and you have created the orthogonal lines that go to your vanishing point. They should be all correct, refined, and ready to transfer to your final surface. The end result is basically something that looks like this, okay? And what we're going to do ours a little bit smaller than this one. So your final surface paper will look like this. You will get this 5.5 by 8.5 inch template, and you will very lightly, with just regular pencil, just trace that outline, okay? And the purpose for this is so that we can put this in a mat when you are all finished with your artwork and you're super proud of it and you want to show it off for the art show. So the mat looks like this, and if you see the border here, right, this will pop right into here, and you aren't cutting off any of your artwork. It will be perfectly viewable within that frame, okay? So that is the purpose of that line. With a traditional Zentangle, we make little dots in the corner with a pencil, and then we connect those dots with any kind of line. Now, you don't have to do this part, but if you want to do this because it's traditional for Zentangles, go ahead. This is a part you can skip if you want, all right? Now, there's two options. You can draw your tangle first or transfer your letter first. It's up to you how you want to do it. It doesn't matter either way, okay? So the tangle, right, is as if we dropped a string on our paper or a ribbon on our paper, and kind of the organic curvy lines that would be created that way. So just any kind of lines to break up your composition, whatever it is great. All right, then you can take your letter and then figure out where you want that to go. Now that you have your lines, you can kind of play around with the placement of that letter. So I'm going to do this one on a weird angle here and break that up a little bit. You want to use 2 pieces of masking tape. I usually like to stick them onto my pants first so they get a little bit of lint on them so they're not super sticky, so it won't tear my paper. Then you're going to take the transfer paper, which is just tracing paper with graphite all over the back of it. You slide that underneath, dark side down, and then you will trace your letter. If you have straight lines on your letter, use a ruler to transfer those straight lines as well so that they remain nice and straight. I'm not going to do this whole thing because I don't want to spend too much time on that right now, but it's regular pressure. You don't have to press super hard, okay? Just enough to transfer the graphite, and then you will see a very light line here that has been transferred. I might need to actually press a little bit harder, but you don't want this line to remain in your final design, so not too much pressure on that. So you should end up with something that looks like this. All right, after you're done transferring, you want to erase the tangle lines that are within your letter. Okay, make sure your letter is nice and clean, and those lines are not super dark. You want them to be nice and light, okay? Now you're ready to start coloring the letter. Before you start on this, I want you to practice in your sketchbook, okay? I started coloring this one, all right? I have some like little 3D models of letters, and we can look stuff up on the internet as well for references about what that should look like. But if you have a 3-dimensional object, like let's say this roll of tape, right? You can see that there's shadows and there's highlights, right? So we want to recreate that in our design. I do have these like little practice sheets. We typically use this with pen, but to create a range of values is super important. So like something like this, if you see a value scale where we go from the darkest dark to the lightest light, and then how we create an image that looks 3-dimensional using those different values. This is just blue pen, so it looks a little bit different than, let's say, colored pencil. But even here, you can see that range, all right? And we do that by pressure and by layers, okay? So in your sketchbook, you can practice creating a gradient just like this, of going from the darkest dark you can get to the lightest light. And we have a variety of colored pencils. We have these Blick Studio ones. We also have 2 different types of Prismacolors. We have regular ones and then also the Scholar ones. They're all in a bin over there. Try not to use the Crayola ones. They're a little bit more waxy than these ones. But what I would recommend, once you pick your colors, hold on to them, okay? And then on the back of your paper, write down the number Like this is 316, this is PC 994. This way you remember, oh, it's yellow. Okay. Well, which yellow? I'm holding 4 different yellows in my hand right now. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure that you are writing down the number so that you remember exactly which yellow, because you don't want to start coloring with one and be like, oh, that one's a weird greenish yellow, and that's not the one I wanted, right? So jot down the numbers you're using, and then you can also keep them in your drawer until you're done, okay? So for value, let's say I want to do a blue value scale. I'm going to gather an assortment of blues. Okay, and then we talked, I think, briefly about color theory. Okay, so if I have blue, I can go from the darkest blue I can get with that one color pencil down to a light blue with very, very light pressure, right? Now, if I want to make that blue darker, there's a couple things I can do to that. One, I can add purple, right? Because purple is slightly darker than blue visually, so I can add purple and deepen those shadows, all right? Second option is I can just add black and make that blue darker. And then the third option is I can add orange, which is the complement. So orange is directly across from blue on the color wheel. Complements make colors look darker. So it would be yellow and purple would be complements, red and green would be complements, and then the blue and the orange. So I can also add orange into my shadow areas to make it look darker, all right? So again, to reiterate on how we use colored pencil, I don't want you guys to hold the pencil like you're writing, right? Where you're right down at the end of the pencil. Go up towards the middle or the end of the pencil. This way, you are not pressing super hard, all right? Light pressure. I want you to move in circular directions because I do not want to see the streaks of you coloring, okay? Nice and even pressure, all right? And now I can push this value way darker, right? And as I fade out with pressure, I'm getting lighter and lighter. Now, if I want to go darker, I can just color in a different direction with a slightly more pressure here and build up layers, okay? So you want to go gradually because you don't want to press too hard, because if you squish the paper and you end up burnishing it by just coloring violently, you can't add anything to that, and then it just makes it too waxy and weird. What'd you say?
It's just wax.
Right. So it squishes the texture of the paper, and we don't like that, all right? So you're going to take your time with this. There's no rushing. There's also no second grade coloring where we just kind of scribble scrabble in there. That's not cute. All right, I yell at my own children all the time if they rush when they're coloring for homework assignments and the such. All right, so layering. Now this is just the one ultramarine blue colored pencil. Now I can pick up a lighter blue, maybe something like this or like this, and I can layer that on and bring that out, and it's going to change your blue a little bit, but it might help you get lighter. We'll take this really pale blue here and extend out. So now I have a nice range. I'll go over the whole thing. Okay, so you see I'm not pressing hard. You see where I'm holding the pencil? I'm holding it all the way at the end. So it's not letting me press hard, okay? Now, if I want to make this darker, I said we can add, oh, this is indigo blue. Oh, that'll make it really dark as well. It's just a naturally darker blue. Okay, I can add straight up black over it. Okay, so that's black over there on the side, and the other option was to add the complement, so I can also go in with some orange. And you can see how that makes that blue darker as well, okay? Once you get to a good point where you're like happy with basically where you placed all your values, you can go and sort of get to the point where you start to burnish a little bit, where you do apply like a really nice thick heavy layer, but you see how dark that got with the complement? And now I can fade that out a little bit, okay? So when you're coloring your letter, you want to make sure that your pencil lines are not super dark because eventually you want them all to go away. I'm going to use this really light purple on the face of this letter. So just to refresh, we're going to take our time. We're going to color in different directions so that I don't see the pencil strokes. The color should be smooth, light layers, nice blend of value. All right, and if you're not sure where to put your darks and your lights, let's look at a picture, or let's look at one of my models of a letter with a light on it and see. And take your time with this. There's no rushing with this. There's no need to rush, okay? It's a small letter. This skill we will apply to future projects, so if you can get good at colored pencil with this project, then you will kick butt at every other project that we do this year, which will be great. All right, and you can see the contrast between the dark here and then kind of how it fades to a medium value to the lighter value, okay? So that's coloring in a nutshell. Then once you're at this point and this is all done and looks really good, you will switch then to your microns and your Sharpies, and in each section here you will create a different Zentangle pattern, creating a variety of like organic designs, geometric designs, using thin lines, you know, thicker lines, and creating a variety of value and textures and patterns with that, okay? And again, your letter should be no bigger than this little template. And if you are struggling with it, I do have these perspective packets here, okay, that you can go through and practice drawing things in 1-point perspective, reviewing the concepts of vanishing point, orthogonals, okay, and what's on eye level, what's above eye level, etc. So depending on your letter and what you're doing, you might want to review this packet. Okay, and I think that about sums it up.